Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs. Right. Good morning, Chris. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah. I don't even know when the last time we recorded was. It's a while ago.
Sometime in like mid-May, I think, something like that. Mid to late-ish, maybe third week in May. How have you been?
I've been good. I had a week off work, so that was nice. And now half my classes have basically left as of tomorrow. So, in fact, I don't even have any lessons tomorrow. I'm going into school, talking to some pupils before their final exam. And then from 9 until 3, I will be sitting around doing basically admin.
Well, I mean, you got to wrap things up. And I mean, if there isn't something useful to do, then don't, make work is silly.
No, it's all stuff. It's all stuff that needs doing for next year. So
cool,
um,
excellent.
So yeah, so that'd be nice. And you've been on holiday.
I have been on holiday. I'm going to use the British term to explain. I'm going to call it a holiday. And we went to our last stop was a few hours in Victoria, British Columbia. And we got to see the very nice Canadian War Memorial there, and also a very nice statue to Queen Victoria from the Prince of Wales from 1919.
Wow.
They're in front of Victoria's like legislative house. I don't know if you'd call it its Parliament House or what. I don't know. But yeah, we went for a 1 week cruise in Alaska for our 20th anniversary, and it was outstanding. It was super great.
Excellent.
And I worked because I have an adventure that I'm writing, or a portion of an adventure that I'm writing, that is a horror story that takes place on a cruise ship that I've been asked to write. And so I was able to take some inspiration and ideas and put those together. So hopefully I'll make some solid progress on that in the next few days. So yeah, it was very nice. We were gone for 10 days. It was good stuff.
That sounds excellent.
Yeah. Now, during this time, though, and this is the subject of our obviously, I did no gaming. I don't know if you've done any gaming, but you did something really interesting while we were
I can't
apart.
remember when we last met to know whether I did whether I've done any gaming since the
It
last
doesn't matter.
episode.
So you did something interesting, and it is the subject of today's episode. You went to, and I've seen lots of posts from Modifius and other companies and just people in general touting.
Look at that for timing. I went to Games Expo.
You went to Games Expo. Where was it?
So Games at UK Games Expo it's always pretty much always the same weekend. We always have this June half-term holiday in the UK, so first week of June or last week of May. And it's at a place called the NEC, which is the National Exhibition Centre, which is this big place in Birmingham.
Birmingham. All right. Where Black Sabbath is from.
There you go. Yeah, so not Alabama, or actually there's probably about 20 more Birminghams in the US because place names not so good at that. And so Birmingham is what we normally refer to as the second city. The difference being is that no one actually goes into it. So whereas people go to London for all kinds of reasons, the only reason I go to Birmingham is to go to the NEC. There's all kinds of things, so Games Expo, and they have other kind of Comic Cons, and I've been there for car things. It's a big exhibition center that does big shows. So I think that's one of the differences, because my understanding is an awful lot of American conventions happen in hotels that have, or that are hotel combined convention centers.
Oftentimes, yeah.
See, this is essentially the only convention center in. Well, that's not in hotel. Okay, this is the main convention center in the UK. There's like smaller ones dotted around. But for example, in Sheffield, we don't have a convention. We have an arena that you can do stuff in, and we have hotels, but we don't have, to my knowledge, there's nowhere like in Sheffield or Leeds or anything where there's a convention. I've been to a Comic Con in Manchester, but again, that's, so there's a handful. We don't really, convention centers is not a thing that we do in the UK. Whereas so Birmingham, you have the NEC is conveniently on sort of next to a couple of motorways. it's on the outskirts of Birmingham, so you don't have to go into it.
Okay, that's handy.
It's handy to get to. Like literally, you're on the motorway and you turn off the motorway and you're at the NEC. It also happens to be next to the airport and next to a train thing. So if you wanted to come from abroad, it's good for that as well.
Gotcha.
Um, I don't think it's amazing for hotels. I think there's only like one or two hotels on the complex. But I mean, it's a big old complex. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's got an airport and a train
So
station.
how long did UK Games Expo last? Was it like 4 days or 3 days? And about how many people attended?
It's 3 days for normal people like me. It's 4 days if you're a distributor. I think they do a day on Thursday where like they get to walk around each other's stores.
That's cool.
But obviously I don't get to do that. I think because I remember looking at this the other day, it was something like
Oh
67,000
wow,
attendees, but then I think it was like 35,000 uniques. So in
that's
terms
a
of
lot of people.
yeah. So that's not bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's their record. Because that's like I think that's it essentially it was getting bigger and bigger every year. So if
Hmm.
we look at this hall that you can see here in the picture behind me, this
Yeah.
is hall one. It's always been in that hall, but the first year I went, it was basically this hall, and then the hall next to it had like a tournaments in, like miniature and cards and other things like Catan
Okay.
World, the Catan UK Championships and diplomacy and stuff like that. And I always
Right
be like,
on.
what? And then over the years, it's got just bigger and bigger and bigger. So now there's two halls this size of just stands of people showing off their games. The
Oh wow.
gaming is then in a third hall, and then even then now they've had like there's a big hall they split into two, and then the ticketing is another hall on top of that. So every single year it gets so it was getting bigger before COVID. Then
Kind of like
COVID
morphs into
happened,
bigger and bigger. That's
yeah, and
cool.
it's getting bigger and bigger every year. I still don't think it's as big as is it Essen? There's a really big one in Germany in sort of September, October time, which I
Hmm.
think is slightly bigger than this. But yeah, I mean it's huge, and yet it still always feels horrendously busy.
Sure.
On the Saturday, it was Friday. Friday gets busy, but is not as bad. Saturday is vile, which is why generally, as a rule, me and Annie, as a rule, have decided like to avoid Saturdays. And then Sunday is usually when Mika can go. It's quiet. It's like you just
Gotcha.
strolling around, and there's space, and you can get by people. And if you want to get from one hall to another, you can do it quickly. Whereas sort of even on Friday, me and Annie were
Right.
like, we want to go from hall one to three. Right, we're going to go out of the halls, walk through
Yeah.
the general convention
So
center, and come back in.
did you so I want to did you do any gaming?
I did. I didn't do any role playing,
Sure, those take up
um,
a lot of time.
which is something you can talk about role playing at cons. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the, I think because role playing games really need to take a bit longer.
Yeah.
I think because I know that there is role playing stuff that goes on. Like there's a hotel, so as well as the three, well, yeah, as well as the three, four halls, there's a whole hotel on the complex that they basically book out all of the rooms in that, which I guess would be I can't think of the word like well, it's like kind of conference room kind of things that you do a little talking. I
Yeah.
think they book out loads of those, and I think
Yeah, like
that's where a lot of
breakout sessions and stuff. So
yeah,
they
that kind of
load
thing.
up those with gaming. Yeah.
So I think they do a lot of like role playing sessions in that, and you have to book it. But
Hmm.
most of the years I go, I'm either going with Annie or I'm going with Mika, or we're going with this whole family, and so therefore that's not something I've really ever
Sure.
considered
You're not
doing.
gonna bog them down in that.
Yeah, and it's like you could sign up for one in the evening, but usually if we're staying over, we stay at a hotel which is like 20 minutes away, so then it makes it a bit more awkward to do evening stuff. So I've never done role playing. Annie has. Annie's done like these kids role playing things which take like 40 minutes kind of thing, which she's too old for now, she says.
Hmm.
But I mean, like this year they were doing the Monty. I was going to say Monty Hall, but not not Monty Hall. Monty Cook's. What is it? No, thank you, evil. So they were running
Oh, okay,
that
for
for
kids. Well, that's
running
cool.
that for kids. Um, so they still do that stuff. But yeah, it tends to. I mean, like, it has everything. There is people doing role playing games, but obviously the people doing role playing games have kind of got their stuff there and their books for sale. But
Yeah.
mostly what you see out, it's board games, it's some areas of miniature games, lots of card games, and then people just selling like dice and
Yeah, it's like
mats
various
and
things.
jewelry and t-shirts and swords. In fact, there's a yellow thing. this is it there? That's just like it's a sword store. It's just full of prop swords, and there
Yeah,
was
I
about
can
three
imagine
of
there would
them.
be lots of people just buying crapola.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like Annie, I think Annie bought a game, but then she was like, two pairs of earrings and a knitted turtle. And in the past, she has bought herself a sword and a
Well, yeah, okay.
foam hammer and a mace and all sorts. So, uh, and yeah, Mika was like, one board game and yeah, earrings and other
That's
stuff.
cool.
She didn't
So
buy any
then
dice this time.
did you pick up any games? Did you talk to anybody at any of the vendor booths, or was there anything that maybe stood out as like, oh, this looked really cool from some company like that would anything like that?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I did more of the talking on the Sunday when I have Mika with me to kind of start conversations with people. Because when it's just me and Annie, like Annie, I won't talk to anyone. And if Annie's around, I'll try and make her talk to people so
That's
I do
good.
that.
That's good
Because
dadsmanship.
I'm just very bad at talking to people. I just like, I'll stand there politely waiting and not talk to anyone. Yeah, on the Friday, they do this pretty cool family zone where like they literally have a table full of games. You just pick a game off the table and take it to the table nearby and try it out. And
That's
we've always
cool.
done that. So me and Annie did that for a few games. Then we played. There's a new Star Wars game out called Bounty Hunters, which is like a card drafting game. Which we got a demo of that. Really liked it. I bought that. Um, Annie picked up a word game where you build wedges of a pizza, which we played that a bunch of times. That's really good. Trying to think, we did play other stuff on the Friday, but me and Annie both struggling to remember what.
What, you
Um,
just like dropped in and played some like short sessions or samples of things?
yeah. So mostly what it is like I said, like in the hotel thing, it's like booked sessions to go and
Mhm.
do like role playing stuff or other longer form games. This is literally it's people showing off their games, so it's a case of waiting until a table's and then going in and going right. Can you show me how your game works?
Gotcha.
So we've noticed they had this. You can actually see it in the bottom. Oh, I'm in front of it where this Star Wars area is. So basically, Asmodee had a huge chunk of the thing, and Asmodee just put out a whole area for Star Wars. So in that, they had like a whole bunch of people running Star Wars Unlimited, which is Fantasy Flight's new collectible card game. They had this Bounty Hunters game, which I think is just not even from. I think it's just from Asmodee themselves. They had the Shatterpoint that I'm playing, which is by Atomic Mass,
Heard of
and
that.
then they had this thing called Mandalorian Adventures. So we looked at getting it, but it was quite busy. We thought actually we're going to want to play this with Mika anyway. So we got shown how to play it by the like one of the main designers. There was two main designers, and the main one is I can't remember his name. I mean he's famous but board game famous. It's like
Gotcha.
Corey
What
Knicha,
kind of
something.
what kind of game is it? What category of
So
game?
it's basically like it's a mission based, a hex based thing, but it's in a book. So it's one of these games you're seeing now where the map's in a book and some
Hmm.
of the rules will be like in a spiral bound flip books. You flip out the book and it'll have like a map in it, and then it'll have some of the instructions. You've got your basic rules for how to play it, but then that's like, well, that shows you where to put your counters and where the good guys go and what the mission is. And we had a good chat. We were able to talk to this guy and he led us through it. So that was really when we definitely that's one that we're like, well, we're going to get. It's not out till August, but we're like, yeah, we will definitely
Okay,
buy
so
that when it's
you
out.
said it's called Mandalorian Adventures,
Mandalorian Adventures,
and it
yeah.
comes out
So
in
it's
August. Okay, that's cool. And that was
so
from
that was
who?
cool. Good question. I
Yeah,
don't know
I'm
if
gonna
it's from
look that up.
Fantasy Flight or what someone like. I mean, Asmodee kind of has this Star Wars license, which they then seem to give to whole because they own so many little companies underneath them. They just seem to throw the license around quite happily to, whoever can make
It's
stuff. So
Asmodee. Okay.
yeah.
I'll
So
put a
it's
link to
weird
it.
because there's some games where so like Fantasy Flight it seems to be moving away from board games and mostly just sort of card games. Atomic Mass is now sort of Asmodee's miniatures game in Wing, but then they make other games sort of just themselves. So it's a weird setup. The other people we talked to, quite what I talked to, reason out was the one of the guys designers for Mass Effect.
Oh, great.
Um, so I got to watch what I say because there was definitely something he said off the record.
Okay, well then
Um,
don't say it. So you talked to
yeah,
them, but what are they
I
in
can't remember
general?
what
What
was
do
the
they
offer.
got coming?
So the weird thing in the past, they've always been running role playing sessions at Modiphius's stand. I've always seen them in the past running, Acting Cthulhu
Yeah.
or Star Trek. Usually, I think this is the first year I couldn't see any role playing things. The big thing for this was a big picture of Vault Boy
Now
You know, so like
they did post some pictures though of their Dreams and Machines cosplay people, so maybe they were doing
missed
that
that.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been off somewhere else, but so the main stall they had four little tables running games, and then literally the whole big center bit of their area was the Vault Buy.
Hmm.
Let me just if I can download it because I can just throw it out behind me. You can see exactly what it was. I just send you it and you can put it on the thing later.
Okay, you do that.
Um, so yeah, there was a picture of literally that was the whole center thing was this like this Fallout 70 Fallout 70 that's weird, so it's not even one of theirs because it says Fallout 76 on the picture. So they've got this big, I mean he's 6 foot tall because he's basically my height, so this big 6 foot tall Vault guy that's in the whole middle of it. They had one table running Fallout, what's the new game called? I'm going to say it's called Fallout Tactics, but I can't remember, with a really nice board. And there was another table which I think was running the same thing. Then there was one which I thought was running Elder Scrolls, but it might have turned out that it was actually running Cohorts Cthulhu. Or was it? No, Cohorts Cthulhu Tactics in there, which I didn't bother looking at because like I have no interest at
Right, I
all.
have heard some things about it though. Some people reading it and sounded pretty interested in it.
It could have been running that,
Yeah.
but I'm like I thought it was Elder Scrolls, whatever it's called, which I've Call to Arms, which I've tried and I have the space thing, and I was like, it was all right, but it was kind of too common, kind of like how Fallout Wasteland Warfare is. It's fine to play a sort of a narrative co-op game, but to play it as a competitive miniatures game, it's like way too complicated for that, which is why they've got Fallout Tactics. So it's kind of like, right, Fallout Tactics will be we can take this to conventions and people can play each other. And
Hmm.
Wasteland Warfare will be for people to play at home with their friends and tell stories, but in a miniatures game. But then they also had one little thing set up for Mass Effect. So some of the stuff was printed rather than the final version. And I think Eric M. Lang was actually there on Saturday because Modifius posted that on Saturday.
Hmm.
I was like, well, that's annoying because I'm like 2 halls away playing Star Wars in a
Bummer.
tournament. Um, but yeah, I talked to the guy that was there on the Sunday, and I got there sort of. We turned up, and he said he was on lunch. And then when I did talk to him, he's like, "I can't run you a demo, but I'll run him through it." So he ran us through how it works. And again, it's similar to the Mandalorian thing. Again, it will be. I don't think it's a spiral round book, but you put a map down, and then you have a book which tells you the missions, and you have the characters from the computer game. And it's kind of got a leveling up thing that from session to session, your characters will improve, and during the sessions they will improve. And it seemed they've done it in a quite clever way where it's not like a crazy long like legacy format game where it'll take you know months and months to play.
Gotcha.
It's not going to be a session. So I think kind of what they're doing right. It might take say 4 sessions to play. So you'll play like mission 1, and then you play a sort of an optional mission 2. Depending on how those went, your mission 3 will be different, and then that'll affect your mission 4. And then there's like a final mission, and then you can go back and try it again, going through a different mission path or setting your character up differently. So that seemed, I mean, that sounds really cool. And like when he talked through it, it was really good. But I had a bit of a talk to him about that. I was essentially asked stuff, and I thought he wouldn't give me any answer. But I was like, can we get a role playing license? And he basically he didn't say no, but he also didn't say yes. I
Yeah,
just sort of thought
they're not going to
I
tell
thought
you.
what he'd say is I can't talk about it. But he didn't say that. He just said, well, we don't know, essentially was his answer. But he said BioWare have been really good to work with. So, because in the past, anyone's ever heard is that the people who make Mass Effect do not want their game. They want to hold on to their game, and they don't want anyone doing anything with it.
Gotcha. They want to have
Um,
control over
yeah,
the story side of what this thing is. Okay,
yeah.
and
So,
obviously
but
releasing an RPG would that's where things start to get a little dicey
it
because
is, but so this game isn't like a copy of an existing thing. He said like it's got a particular time period within Mass Effect 3. And the way he described it is like it was like it would be downloadable content that had come out, like extra missions that so you play between sort of like it's around sort of the 2/3 point way through the game. And it's if you imagine you'd gone on this mission during the game, that's what it is. But even then, everything within that they are making up and they have to get it checked by BioWare. So they have had leeway to kind of make up their own thing. So it's done in a way that it can't mess up the whole world or anything,
hmm.
but at the same time, it's all new stuff. Well, I mean the character, but the story is new essentially, and Bioware are letting them doing it. So I mean, essentially, you could tell if they did let them do a role playing game, this guy was like, that is my dream. Like that is the number one thing I want to do a Mass Effect role playing game. And considering obviously, they already do role-playing games, he obviously seemed really keen on it. Yeah, I know what stuff he said. Basically it was because I'd said, oh, I do a podcast and we often talk about 2D20, and we've been talking about an Elder Scrolls role-playing
Yeah.
game and stuff. There was a handful of things I will have to tell you after we stop recording. I'll
Okay.
put it that way.
Okay. So the implication here, folks, is that there are secret things that Chris is going to share with me. Who knows what we'll be able to do with that? But that
Well,
sounds really
they're not
cool.
necessarily about Mass Effects. Before anyone gets excited, and he did tell me there is a role-playing game coming. It's not that. It was about
Okay.
other stuff. But he said
So
off the
it's so
record, so I'm going to be professional, and despite the fact I don't get paid for this, and I'll tell you afterwards.
cool.
But the game, it sounded really good.
So overall, it sounds to me like you had a good time. You had a good time. You saw a lot of different things. You played some fun stuff. You came away with some things. What's your like major? What's your favorite thing that you got? And what, if anything, that you learned or was tipped off to or thought is like something you looked at and said, "Oh, that's cool. That's upcoming." What are the
Mass? Oh, there's three things about upcoming. Upcoming, it'd be the Mass Effect game, which I think literally Mika was like writing down details and when it was out so we could buy it
right
for
on.
Christmas. So I think it's out in November. The guy even said there's this thing in Mass Effect. I can't remember whether it's a special organization or the main guy's code, but it's N7, which is actually, if you've ever seen you probably never seen my thing on Discord. I have the N7. I think I have an N7 badge on there. And so they have this thing, the N7 day, which would be, that's when he wants to release it, November the 7th. No, is that right? Oh yeah, N7. Yeah, November the 7th. But I don't think he can manage that. But that's what he was hoping for. So yeah, Christmas, that'd be great. Mandalorian Adventure we're looking forward to. And then it's a tradable card game, but it's going to work in a different way. This thing called Altered. I'd never heard of it. It may have been another Masma one. It was kind of near their stuff.
What was it called?
It was just called Altered.
Altered.
Yeah, it's a collectible, tradable card, like Magic et al. But when you're playing, you're not, although you're competing with your opponent, you're not like beating up their stuff or like just scoring points. Your characters are going on a journey to try and meet their companions who are also going on a journey. So that was nice. And we played it with Annie. She thought, well, I like that because it wasn't just beating each other up. It was
Gotcha. I like
different.
that idea.
But the other thing I haven't looked into afterwards, they've got some really weird ideas to do with digital. So one of them essentially is if you get a card and you want extra copies of it for a deck, rather than having to hunt that card out, you scan the QR code that links to your account, and then you can just print extra copies, which they will send you. And then you can even sell your digital rights to a card to someone else, so then they can print it. So like if you just want some physical cards and you're not bothered about the digital things, there's ways of kind of like, well, I'm just going to play it physically, but I'm going to give someone else my digital cards. And then, so I can't really get my head around it and the benefits. I can certainly see there's something clever there. And it apparently made an absolute fortune on Kickstarter. But just the actual fact that it was a game where it's a trading card game where you don't have to do this, because I don't do the trading. Like any of these kind of card games, I'll buy a starter deck, I'll play it with Mika, and then it becomes too expensive to buy other things and make decks. So this is the kind of thing that actually all the cards are just on them. Maybe I'll just I'll print them myself or whatever. But so those are the three things I'm really looking forward to. In terms of stuff I bought, the Bounty Hunters card game that I bought, we've played that a bunch already. Really enjoyed that. When I was there, I haven't played it yet, but they I don't know if you've heard, you've done it because you don't really play card games. Someone for Disney released, it's Ravensburger, released a tradable card game for Disney called Lorcana. And the newest set of that has a cooperative expansion, which I hadn't heard about because I'd kind of started when it came out, I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this game. And I printed proxy decks and bought everything that came out and spent a fortune. And then every time a new wave's come out, I've just kind of bought the starter decks and played a few games. And then I didn't even know there was a new wave out. But yeah, there was this whole thing. So I'm excited to play that because it's literally, rather than having to play against Mika, we can play together against Ursula, which is, the sea witch from Little Mermaid.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's quite cool. So yeah, I'm happy about that. And there was another strategy game we bought called Wang, which is like a board control game set in the Warring Kingdoms period of China, which we played it there and the guy explained it really badly. And then me and Mika played it at home, and halfway through I realized I got some of the rules wrong. So it's the basics are easy. The basics are like you put some tiles down, but how things interact and the scoring is more complicated. And it's kind of the strategy we realized like halfway through the second game. I'm like, I'm going to start a war. And destroyed all her leaders. And I'm like, yes. And then she's like, fine, I'm going to just come back and do this other thing. And then I ended up losing the game. So yeah, it was quite good that we're like kind of getting the hang of it every time we play. So that was good. So yeah, there was a whole bunch of, and in the middle of it, I managed to get in a tournament of Shatterpoint on the Saturday while the girls went and did other stuff.
That's cool.
So it
That's
was good.
excellent. Yeah, I think it's important, and it sounds kind of, maybe this sounds kind of corny, but, and this is my contribution to this episode because obviously I was not at Expo UK. I was, or UK Games Expo. I was on a ship. Um, I think it's, if you have the opportunity to attend a convention, go. Even if it's one of these things that, you've got to travel for it. And I know, unfortunately, that can be pricey. But it's definitely something worth doing because you get these tips of what's coming up. You get that FaceTime with designers, not from the standpoint of like, I talked to such and such, who cares? But that you actually get the opportunity to talk with them, maybe have them show you their games. And then obviously it's cool to just have the opportunity to, buy things that you might not necessarily get because you see them from a different angle because you're able to play them, and that's exciting. That's really cool. I know we have our local convention, RingCon, is taking place in November, mid-November of this year, and so it'll be at a hotel convention center, and I'll be there. I'll run some things, and it's a small, like I'd call it local to maybe regional. Like some people, good number of people come down from Phoenix. Some people will come in from California, but not too much. It's mainly just Arizona. But there'll be some vendors there, and it's always neat to just mix with people who you wouldn't otherwise at your local store or in your local, your own group. So that's really cool. That's really, how far, and remind me, how far is Birmingham from you?
It's an hour and a half. I always think it's
Oh,
closer because there's been years I thought, like, oh well, I'll drive down on the Friday and then I'll drive back and then I'll drive down on the Sunday and I'll drive back. But then I look at it and go, oh, but it's an hour and a half, and then there's half an hour queuing to get into the car park. So actually, it's 2 hours, and like,
gotcha.
yeah, going there and back every day is not practical.
So did you
Uh,
stay?
yeah, I found a hotel sort of 25 minutes
Okay,
away, and it was near to like, well, I had a restaurant and it was near other food places. So we did that. I ended up being the same place that me and Annie stayed at last year.
cool.
Um, so yeah, that was good.
Very good. Do you have are there any other conventions of any sort that are coming up?
We don't really. So I think there actually is now the magazine that I sent you a picture of the other day,
Yep.
Tabletop Gaming Magazine. I think they actually do like a convention thing. It's nowhere near as big as this, but I think they do something once a year now. And then other than that, we just don't really have like big gaming conventions. And like the America, you have like the really big one, Gen Con.
Yeah.
But then you have things like Adepticon, which is a really big one, which is mostly miniatures.
Yep.
And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, like you said, scattered all over your country. We just don't really have that. I mean,
Yeah.
literally on your average weekend, there are tournaments running at separate like local game shops. And then you have this big Essen thing in Germany. I'm sure there's something, there are other cons, but they're like, tiny little ones. And certainly around here, I don't know of any, like in terms of gaming conventions. I mean, there's probably people that go on the Discord and go, there's loads what you're talking about. This is the big one because it has everything there. Like there are people coming from all over literally the world because there's, all the Europeans and the American people are turning up. Although there were people missing this year. So like Wizards of the Coast weren't there this year. Hazo.
Wizards was busy having committee meetings to choose crappy cover art for the core books. So busy trying to find the most bland, lifeless art to put on their
Just
flagship
just to
game
pay
books.
someone to paint something decent, flipping out. They're not good, are they?
They paid someone to
Um,
paint things.
but
Anyway,
like companies like Cubicle 7, like you see because the shadow, right? That's literally all
sure,
Cubicle
sure.
7 stuff above me. So they're an American company, and Catalyst are there, and Asmodee's, God knows, they're all over the place. So there were companies from like all over the world,
All right.
but yeah, the other kind of conventions I don't think tends to be much 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 smaller than this. So this is the big one because it has everything, and anyone who's anyone pretty much will be there. We don't really have a lot of big other gaming conventions. So no, one of these days I should really look into the tabletop one. I think they do that in London though. So then it's like, well, that's then having to either like go with my parents and travel through London.
Yeah, that
every
takes a
day
lot
each
more
day.
planning.
But
And you know it's going to be a
pain.
heck of a lot pricier, so it's something that you really do need to plan for.
Whereas this is, it's not close. I can't get there and back super easy, but
But it's not
it's not
terribly far.
Yeah,
This
and
would be like me going to Phoenix, which is
yeah,
about a 2
even
hour
though
drive.
the hotels on site are crazy expensive, there's enough hotels within sort of 20-25 minute drive
Right.
that it's not an issue, which is what
So
we.
so here's what I'll throw out to you folks watching and or listening. If you've got a convention that's in your area, I say like something that you would consider attending. Put a link to it on go either put a link to it on the YouTube comments, or better yet, join the Discord. The link to which is in the notes below. Join the Discord and drop some in there, because I mean, it's so weird. I mean, in Arizona, everything happens in Phoenix. Everything happens. It's the state capital, and it's like a significant chunk of the whole state's population lives in the Phoenix metro area. Everything happens in Phoenix. And there are so many things that happen in Phoenix that unless you are tapped into what's happening in Phoenix, you have no clue. Nothing happens in Tucson. And so, like, we'll have RingCon, but there are actually a couple of like game, comic book, and like various fandom conventions that take place in Phoenix throughout the year, all of which have gaming components to them. And so if you've got some regional or local con that you're going to attend here, I'll say by the end of this calendar year, by the end of 2024, drop a link. You have no idea who else is listening, who's maybe at least in the US, one state away, or maybe only a couple hours away. And because they're not tapped into your network, is like, I've never even heard of that thing. I don't even know that exists. But we might, you might end up helping someone find some cool opportunities to game and rub elbows with some designers. So do that. And also in the doing, like, subscribe, join the Discord.
Yeah.
What else?
That's everything, isn't it?
Subscribe to the podcast.
Leave feedback.
Leave feedback. Give us thumbs up.
Yeah.
Ring the bell. That's all at the top. And there we go. Right on. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can join our Discord, you can subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a great day. We look forward to talking with you.